rises sharply, but the travel sector condemns the return of passenger tests. Today saw a 50% rise in cases of the new variant here in just 24 hours as ministers defend the mandatory test for every incoming passenger.
I do think we just need to make sure we take as a precautionary measure the steps necessary to stop any new variants coming into this country.
Also tonight, a national review into how the abuse of Arthur Labinjo Hughes was missed, which led to his murder. The Indonesian villages buried by hot ash and thick mud after a volcano eruption. And William wanders around Sandringham and records his thoughts on everything from his emotions to singing Tina Turner with his mum.
This is ITV News with Chris Shipp.
Hello, good evening. There's been a steep rise in the cases of the Omicron variant here as the government defends the return of COVID tests for incoming passengers. The travel industry has described the requirement for a pre-flight lateral flow or PCR test as a hammer blow to the sector, which was only starting its recovery. Despite the travel bans already announced and the addition of Nigeria to the red list, the number of confirmed cases of the new variant across the UK has jumped to 246. That's more than a 50% rise in a single day. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has the latest.
Drive-through testing in Surrey today. The testing system only picks up a certain amount of the Omicron variant, and as it's not yet clear how much of a threat it poses, ministers hope to slow its spread with measures not always popular, like pre-departure tests for travellers.
Well, look, we weigh up the balance very carefully. I do think we just need to make sure we take as a precautionary measure the steps necessary to stop any new variants coming into this country seeding and undoing the good work that we've done with getting the virus under control.
The travel industry has already been hard hit by coronavirus, and the new pre-departure tests for anyone coming into the UK have been described by its representatives as a huge blow. What's the problem with asking people to complete what is a relatively inexpensive lateral flow test?
Some people would be reluctant to travel with a pre-departure test in place because if that test were to be positive, they would then be faced with having to self-isolate in the country where they were, as opposed to in the UK.
This is the rise in detected Omicron cases over the last few days, but only a proportion of test results are sent for sequencing, so the true figure will be considerably higher. As the variant appears highly transmissible and already here, scientists in South Africa, where it was identified, say it's too late for travel restrictions.
The knee-jerk reaction from the rest of the world has been totally uncalled for. Why not wait for the science and look at the science? And the number one thing that the science of transmission would tell you is that if there's a very transmissible virus, travel bans is not going to keep that virus out of your country.
But here, the government hopes that travel restrictions will at least slow the spread of the Omicron variant, while scientists work out whether or not it actually is a serious threat to public health. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
After the shocking court case into the murder of Arthur Labinjo Hughes last week, the government has announced a national review into the circumstances which led to his death. Outside his home in Solihull today, his grandmother joined hundreds of others at a vigil and released balloons in memory of the 6-year-old. Vincent McAviney reports.
Arthur, are you going to play for England?
This video released by Arthur Labinjo Hughes' family is how they want the smiling 6-year-old to be remembered.
So you're going to play for Liverpool, then Tottenham. What about England?
After when I'm in Tottenham.
Today, outside the home he was so cruelly tortured and murdered in, the community came together with Arthur's grandmother to pay their respects.
Just a pause here and much understood.
But in a sign of just how moved the whole country has been by this tragic case, more football matches were stopped at 6 minutes in a mark of respect for Arthur's all-too-short life. A public grief and anger the government has responded to with a national review into safeguarding failures.
It's right that we look at the criminal justice end, and in between that, I think the job of social workers, particularly those looking at children of at particular risk. We need to learn the lessons.
Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi will unveil the full details in a common statement tomorrow. It's important to note, though, that whilst it's being called a national review, it is just a review of the agencies and the events in Solihull that then might be shared nationally. It's not yet at the level that we've seen in previous cases where you have an independent or judge-led inquiry, which then leads to structural changes. Some experts, though, are calling on the Prime Minister to skip yet another review and simply take action.
What he can do is invest in children and adolescent mental health, make sure that we've got enough resources to help our children in need, invest in frontline social work, and that statutory leads are, in fact, held to account in that regard. So let's have more police officers available, because what I've found, Prime Minister, is that as all these reviews have gone on, we've got fewer police on the ground.
Time will tell whether this review actually leads to action, but for children across the country who may secretly be in the same dire situation as Arthur was, time might not be on their side. Vincent McAviney, ITV News.
As some households in northeast England prepare for a 10th night without power tonight following last Friday's Storm Arwen, the Energy Secretary finally visited the area today, saying the delays in restoring electricity were totally unacceptable. 3,200 homes remain cut off this evening, and there is another storm named Barra due to sweep across most of the UK on Tuesday. From Northumberland, here's Ellie Pitt.
Carolyn and George Graham don't just need electricity to keep themselves warm. It's what they need to keep cold that's causing them worry. This meat is worth thousands to their business this Christmas.
Concerned about the potential of losing stock in the butchery side, and also loss of income this week, and then extra costs because not everything's going to be covered by Northern Power Grid or insurance.
It's been a difficult time.
Yeah, I think we're just getting very tired.
And how many homes will that go back?
9 days into the emergency, the Energy Secretary made his first visit to an affected area in County Durham.
I think it's completely unacceptable that they're still off power, and that's why I have instituted a review into whether the companies have invested enough. Ofgem are looking at this, and of course there will be some sort of enforcement.
But that's little comfort to those who've sought shelter in Rothbury's town hall, like Ian, who faces waking up on another Monday morning without heating and a hot shower.
You fall into a routine of wondering how many candles you're going to use that day, collecting some logs for the wood burner, and then about 5 o'clock at night, you keep looking at your watch, thinking, oh, there's only another 14 hours until daylight.
Do you need any batteries or anything?
They're giving out supplies here into a second week, and weather forecasts suggest they shouldn't stop anytime soon. But more bad weather on the way.
I know, I've seen the forecast for Tuesday. We're keeping a close eye on it, and I'll try and get some sleep before then.
They're used to wild weather here, but this is just the start of winter, so residents are bracing themselves for more disruption in the weeks and months ahead. Ellie Pitt, ITV News, Northumberland.
To Europe now, and on the Greek island, which has been at the front line of Europe's refugee crisis, Pope Francis has condemned the treatment of migrants. Speaking in Lesbos, the pontiff called for an end to what he called self-interest shown by political leaders when it comes to asylum seekers. The Pope also criticised the building of walls and fences in some European countries to keep migrants out. Thick mud and falling ash is disrupting the rescue effort in Indonesia after the eruption of the Mount Semeru volcano. 14 people have died from burns. Others are in a critical condition in hospital. It's the highest volcano on the island of Java. It sent hot ash 40,000 feet into the air, and tons of lava and mud poured into surrounding villages. Lewis Warner has more.
Entire villages submerged in ash. This is the aftermath of a deadly eruption from Indonesia's highest mountain. For the second time this year, Mount Semeru on the island of Java has spewed thick lava more than 40,000 feet into the air. Several hundred people were moved to temporary shelters, but not everyone was able to evade danger. This truck driver says everyone was scared and running in panic because this eruption was much bigger than the eruption that occurred last year. Doctors say most of those coming to them are complaining of a shortness of breath, the longer-term impacts of which could be severe. Indonesia sits on the so-called Ring of Fire, a string of sites prone to seismic activity on the edge of the Pacific Ocean. From the air, Sumberwulu village can be seen coated in ash. On the ground, it's clear those who once called this place home will now need somewhere else to stay. It's not just the island's human population that's been devastated. These monkeys and their food are also covered in ash. The National Disaster Mitigation Agency says rescuers are still searching for 7 residents and a group of sand miners. As they survey the devastation, it's feared the death toll could well rise. Lewis Warner, ITV News.
Now, Prince William has spoken about the emotional toll of dealing with life and death call-outs as an air ambulance pilot. In a new podcast recorded while walking around Sandringham, he's admitted he was taking home other people's trauma. But he's also shared some happier memories, describing how his mother would sing Tina Turner to him and Harry on the drive to school. Faye Barker has been listening.
In 2015, Prince William began 2 years of flying with the East Anglia Air Ambulance.
I just want to say very, very happy to be here. First day, nerves.
But those nerves turned to feelings of trauma, he says, especially when dealing with life and death situations involving children. Speaking emotionally at times in a new podcast, he reflects on the need to be open about our mental health.
We all want to stay fit. We all want to go for walks. We want to go to the gym. We like to keep active. The doctors tell us it's good for us. Well, no one says how good it is to keep mentally fit. And it's so important. You can hear all the ducks, the geese, and all the birds all along our coastline here.
In an ITV documentary last year, Prince William shared moments of his time on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. And it's during a walk here that he's recorded more personal thoughts.
But we know there's still an awful lot of stigma about our mental health. And so when people in the public eye, such as Prince William, are open about it, it encourages many other people to do the same.
William also reflects on memories with his mother and the secrets of the playlist when she drove him and Prince Harry to boarding school.
One of the songs I massively remember and has stuck with me all this time, and I still, to this day, still quite enjoy, secretly, is Tina Turner's To The Best. You're simply the best! Because sitting in the back seat, singing away, it felt like a real family moment. She'd be driving along, singing at the top of her voice. And we'd even get the policeman in the car, he'd be occasionally singing along as well. You'd be singing and listening to the music right the way out into the gates of school when they dropped you off, and that's when reality kind of sunk in, that you really were going back to school.
Memories from the future king that he hopes will get other people talking. Faye Barker, ITV News.
Finally, 100 years ago today, women were banned by the FA for playing on Football Association grounds. Well, today, a century on, more than 40,000 fans watched the country's top professionals play the delayed 2021 FA Cup final at Wembley, with Chelsea beating Arsenal 3-0. Chris Scudder was watching.
Exactly a century on from the women's game's darkest day and a 50th cup final since the ban was lifted. The relative light years that have passed since then were almost matched by Chelsea's lightning start. 2 minutes on the clock and England's Fran Kirby opened the scoring. Unsuitable for ladies, the FA once said, and this was proper rough and tumble.
Burley challenge there as well.
Chelsea should have been out of sight by half-time, and you wondered whether they would regret misses like this from Sam Kerr. But the Aussie striker wasn't done.
Kerr doesn't use her, wrong foot's the goalkeeper. Chelsea are 2-0 up, they have one hand on the cup.
And to cap it all, a moment that Messi would have been proud of.
What a goal to seal the FA Cup victory.
3-0, and on a landmark day, delayed a few months by COVID, an unforgettable clean sweep treble for Chelsea. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
Right, we're back at 10:20 tonight after I'm a Celebrity. Until then, have a good evening.